5:10 a.m. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Eastern Industrial Corridor. October 14th, 2025. Four black suburban units killed their headlights 400 meters from the Riverbend Gypsum and Wallboard facility on East Apache Street. The convoy stopped. Engines off. 12 operators in full tactical configuration stepped out in sequence and stacked against the chain-link perimeter without a word exchanged. A second element, 6 agents in plainclothes driving a panel van marked with a defunct HVAC logo, was already parked on the access road to the south, cameras running, radio on. The facility looked dead. It had looked dead for 4 years. 180,000 square feet of weathered metal cladding. A faded sign, private security, no trespassing. Overhead fluorescent light barely leaking from a second-floor window, barely visible through a ventilation louver at the south end of the building. Easy to miss at highway speed. 42 agents total. FBI hostage rescue team, designated primary breach. DEA special response team, secondary containment. 4 teams. 4 designated entry points. Simultaneous. The command word came through encrypted radio at 5:11 a.m. Inside that building, 8 American women had not seen natural light in 108 days. They had been recruited off legitimate job boards, flown into Tulsa under false pretenses, and held in a converted second-floor maintenance suite with no exterior windows and 2 interior rooms. Their names had accumulated quietly on missing persons boards across 3 states: Arizona, Texas, Kansas. The raid lasted 9 minutes, from first breach to all clear. Understanding how the investigation unfolded is the real story. Because none of this started with a federal investigation. It started with a purchase order. A recurring line item for industrial polyurethane conveyor belts, sealed bearings, and drive rollers. Shipping destination, Riverbend Gypsum and Wallboard, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Facility status on county records. Temporarily out of production since 2021. A parts distributor in Joplin, Missouri, noticed the mismatch. That single observation, 1 supplier, 1 anomaly, 1 call to an old contact at the FBI, would eventually bring down a transnational recruitment network called Aspen Hospitality Talent Group. No complaints had been filed about Riverbend in 4 years. Not a single one. Pull the county assessor records for the Riverbend Gypsum and Wallboard property, and the picture looks entirely unremarkable. The parcel is listed as commercial industrial, 182,000 square feet of enclosed space on a 14-acre lot on the eastern edge of Tulsa County. Assessed value, $4.3 million. Property taxes, paid quarterly, on time, every quarter since 2021, by wire transfer from a limited liability company registered at a commercial mailbox address in Reno, Nevada, Halcyon Industrial Properties, LLC. The registered agent, a compliance firm that manages several hundred similar shell entities out of the same suite. No liens. No code violations. No complaints. Clean record, by every surface measure a dormant industrial property in the hands of a passive holding company. The Tulsa County records note the facility went offline in late 2021, attributed to a slowdown in regional construction demand. The prior tenant, an actual drywall manufacturing company, vacated the premises. Halcyon Industrial Properties assumed the lease, later converted to ownership, and filed no permits for renovation or tenant improvements. To drivers on Interstate 44, Riverbend looked like another industrial site from a previous era. Rust on the cladding, silent loading dock, aging fence. What it actually was, during that same window of apparent dormancy, was an operational facility. Active 3-phase electrical service drawing $4,800 per month in utility costs. Climate control running through retrofitted HVAC units installed without building permits. A second-floor maintenance wing, originally designed to house equipment repair personnel, converted into 2 interior rooms with reinforced doors, no exterior windows, and a retrofitted ventilation system. I spent considerable time going through the utility records later produced in the federal case file. Power draw at Riverbend was consistent, $4,800 per month from January 2024 through October 2025. For a facility with no listed employees, no production activity, no registered tenants, that figure was impossible. A dormant plant does not need $4,800 in electricity every month. A dormant plant does not need active water service. A dormant plant does not run climate control. But none of that was visible from the county assessor database. You would have to request the utility records directly, and nobody had reason to do that. The network's actual sophistication was in staying boring. Riverbend wasn't worth investigating. The recruitment operation ran under a completely separate name in a completely separate city. Aspen Hospitality Talent Group was a Dallas-based limited liability company incorporated in Delaware in early 2024. Its website listed a suite address in the Uptown Dallas corridor, a real address, a real suite, rented through a shared office provider, staffed 2 days per week. The company presented itself as a hospitality staffing agency specializing in international hotel management placements. The pitch was specific and well-constructed. European hotel chains, the pitch explained, were increasingly recruiting American hospitality graduates for management rotation programs, 1-year contracts, accommodation included, salary in euros, a credential that looked exceptional on a resume. The positions were listed on legitimate job aggregator platforms. The postings used the names of actual European hotel brands, slightly modified. The salaries listed were credible, not so high as to signal fraud, not so low as to be unattractive. Applications came in. Aspen Hospitality processed them through a real-looking HR workflow, preliminary screening calls, a formal application form, a video interview conducted by individuals using professional backgrounds and European accented English, a conditional offer letter on letterhead that looked, to an untrained eye, entirely legitimate. The women came from Phoenix, Dallas, and Wichita, aged 22 to 26, several with hospitality backgrounds. The offer, management rotation in Europe, fully sponsored, starting within 30 days, was credible enough. 8 women accepted. They signed contracts. They were given travel itineraries specifying a connecting flight through Tulsa, described as a domestic staging hub for international departures. They were transported to the Riverbend facility. They did not leave. The first woman was reported missing in late July 2025. Her family in Phoenix filed a report. Local police opened a missing person investigation. A second report followed within 2 weeks, from a family in Wichita. Then a third, from Dallas County. The cases were filed across 3 jurisdictions, with 3 different local agencies, using 3 different reporting formats. Nothing, at that point, connected them. The mechanism that connected them was not a law enforcement database. It was a conveyor belt parts order. The network's security was strong enough to evade police databases. It was undone by a supplier's intuition about a purchasing pattern that made no sense. Sandra Kowalczyk runs a mid-sized industrial components distributorship out of Joplin, Missouri, 3rd-generation family business, specializing in conveyor systems, drive components, and replacement parts for manufacturing operations across the Midwest. She has been in the business for 22 years. She knows her customers the way a pharmacist knows their regulars, by their purchase cadence, by what their orders tell you about what they are actually doing in a facility. In August 2025, Kowalczyk's company received the 3rd consecutive monthly order from a customer account registered to Riverbend Gypsum and Wallboard in Tulsa. Industrial polyurethane belts, the kind used on active production lines. Sealed bearings, drive rollers, not maintenance stock, not a one-time parts replacement. The same recurring order, on the same monthly cycle, in quantities consistent with an active production line. She pulled the customer file. The account had been opened in May 25. 3 orders in 3 months, each order consistent with the operational needs of an active facility. The billing address, a P.O. box in Reno, Nevada. The shipping destination, Riverbend Gypsum and Wallboard, East Apache Street, Tulsa. She ran the name on a general search. County records, temporarily out of production since 2021. Active production-grade conveyor parts. Monthly recurring order. Dormant facility. That number could not exist in a legitimate operation. Kowalczyk had worked peripherally with a white-collar FBI agent out of the Springfield, Missouri resident agency several years earlier, a tax fraud case involving a supplier in her distribution network. The relationship had been professional and brief, but she had the agent's direct number. She called it. Special Agent Daniel Muir was assigned to the FBI's Springfield resident agency under the Kansas City Field Division. His portfolio was financial crimes, wire fraud, money laundering, shell company structures. The Kowalczyk call came through on a Thursday afternoon in late August 2025. He listened. He asked her to forward the order records and the customer account documentation. She did, within the hour. What Muir had, initially, was a thin anomaly, a purchasing pattern inconsistent with a facility's listed status. Not a crime, not even necessarily suspicious in isolation. But anomalies were his professional vocabulary. He ran Riverbend Gypsum and Wallboard through available databases. County records confirmed the dormant status. Secretary of State records for Oklahoma showed no active business registration under that name. The property owner of record, Halcyon Industrial Properties, LLC, Reno, Nevada. He pulled Halcyon. The Reno registration traced to a commercial registered agent service. The managing members listed were 2 individuals whose names appeared in no other public records, no professional licenses, no property records, no social media presence, no business registrations in any state. 2 names that existed only on paper in a single Nevada filing. Muir elevated the matter to the Kansas City Field Division. The Kansas City office ran the utility inquiry. Oklahoma Natural Gas confirmed active service at the Riverbend address. PSO, the regional electrical utility, confirmed active 3-phase service, $4,800 per month, consistent billing for 22 months. 22 months of active power draw at a facility listed as out of production. That discrepancy triggered a formal intelligence review. The intelligence review, conducted over 72 hours at the Kansas City Field Division, produced 2 additional threads. The first, a cross-reference of the Aspen Hospitality Talent Group name against financial intelligence databases. Aspen Hospitality had filed as an LLC in Delaware in February 2024. Its registered business purpose: hospitality, staffing, and workforce placement. Its bank account, at a regional bank in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, showed inflows from wire transfers originating in Hungary and Romania over a 14-month period. Outflows, payroll-style recurring transfers to 4 individuals, and a series of payments to the Halcyon Industrial Properties LLC account in Nevada. The financial thread connected the Dallas front company to the Tulsa property. The second thread, 3 open missing persons cases, flagged by a pattern recognition algorithm running on the National Crime Information Center database. 3 women, ages 22 to 26. Last known locations: Phoenix, Dallas, Wichita. Reported missing across a 40-day window in July and August 2025. All 3 had, in the weeks before disappearing, made social media posts referencing a European hotel management opportunity. Two of them had mentioned Aspen Hospitality Talent Group by name. The algorithm had flagged the cluster. The flag had been sitting in a review queue for 11 days. Muir's inquiry caused a senior analyst at the FBI's Operational Technology Division to pull the flag manually. Within 4 hours of that pull, the Kansas City Field Division had opened a formal federal investigation. Most people assume these kinds of networks get uncovered by aggressive surveillance or informants embedded in the operation. In this case, the trigger was a software flag that had been pending review for nearly 2 weeks, and an inquiry from a parts supplier in Missouri. The system worked, but slowly, and only because someone made a call that didn't have to be made. The formal investigation was designated Operation Blackline. Lead agency, FBI Kansas City Field Division. Supporting agencies, DEA Domestic Operations Division, Homeland Security Investigations. The investigative framework was built around 3 parallel tracks. Track 1, Financial Investigation of Aspen Hospitality Talent Group and Halcyon Industrial Properties, targeting the wire transfer network and the beneficial ownership structure behind both entities. Track 2, Physical Surveillance of the Riverbend facility to confirm occupancy, identify operatives, and assess conditions inside the structure. Track 3, Victim Identification, cross-referencing the missing persons cases against Aspen Hospitality's known applicant pool to determine how many individuals might be inside the facility. Track 2 began within 72 hours of the investigation opening. A surveillance team, 2 agents in a decommissioned utility truck, parked at rotating positions along East Apache Street, began continuous observation of the Riverbend perimeter. Day 1, 2 vehicle movements observed at the facility, both entering and exiting through the south access gate. 1 late-model Chevrolet Silverado pickup with Texas plates. 1 commercial delivery van, no markings. Day 2, 3 vehicle movements. A 3rd vehicle, a Ford Transit with Oklahoma plates, arrived in the early afternoon and remained overnight. Day 3 brought the first significant obstacle. The surveillance team's secondary camera unit, mounted in the utility truck, developed a condensation fault in overnight temperatures and went offline without recorded warning. The team lost 6 hours of visual coverage during a window when 2 vehicle movements were later reconstructed from partial plate reader data. The gap in the surveillance record created an evidentiary hole that the legal team would need to address in any subsequent prosecution. The fix was a replacement unit flown in from the Kansas City office and mounted within a 4-hour window. 6 hours of coverage lost. Nothing irreplaceable, but it was the kind of problem that reminded every agent on the team how little margin existed in an operation this compressed. By day 5, surveillance had identified 4 individuals consistently operating at the facility. 2 entered and exited regularly. 2 appeared to remain inside, with no observed departures. A technical surveillance aircraft overfly, conducted at altitude with a heat imaging sensor array under a court-authorized warrant, confirmed multiple thermal signatures on the facility's 2nd floor, in the northwest quadrant, consistent with the maintenance suite identified on the original building plans obtained from Tulsa County records. The imaging could not confirm the number of individuals with precision because the heat signatures in the converted maintenance suite were clustered in 2 rooms. But the count was consistent with multiple occupants. And the distribution of signatures across the 2nd floor showed 4 signatures in the south section, consistent with the operatives, and a denser cluster of signatures in the 2 northern interior rooms. 8 missing women. 5 days of surveillance. 4 identified operatives. The investigation was 11 days old. It had not yet identified the full organizational structure above the 4 on-site operatives. On September 16, 2025, the financial investigation produced its first major breakthrough. A subpoena served on the Dallas-Fort Worth Regional Bank produced 14 months of transaction records for the Aspen Hospitality account. The record showed inbound wire transfers totaling approximately $3.1 million over 14 months, originating from 2 Hungarian-registered corporate entities and 1 Romanian entity. Outbound from Aspen, payments to Halcyon Industrial Properties in Reno for lease and maintenance costs. 4 payroll-style recurring transfers to accounts held in the names of the on-site operatives identified through the surveillance, and 6 irregular transfers to 2 additional accounts, 1 held in Dallas, 1 held in Houston. The Dallas account was registered to a person not yet identified in the investigation. The Houston account was held in the name of a limited liability company incorporated 4 months earlier. The network was not 4 people. The network was at least 6, with possible additional layers above the European wire transfer entities. The lead agent on Operation Blackline, Supervisory Special Agent Renata Halverson of the Kansas City Field Division, made the decision to expand the scope of the tactical operation. What had been planned as a single-site entry at Riverbend would now require a coordinated secondary element in Dallas to prevent the 2 unidentified actors from destroying evidence or destroying communication records the moment a breach was executed at the Tulsa facility. The Dallas element added operational complexity that the planning team had not initially anticipated. That complexity created the second significant obstacle of the investigation. Halverson faced tight constraints. She had a confirmed location and victims, but only a 4-day window before a scheduled utility inspection could alert the network's operators. She had 2 unidentified actors in Dallas, whose location was partially known, 1 address confirmed through surveillance, 1 not. She had to execute both elements simultaneously to prevent communications that would warn the Tulsa site. And she had to do it without her surveillance activity, running continuously for 16 days, being detected by the on-site operatives. The planning team requested FBI hostage rescue team deployment from Quantico for the Tulsa primary breach. The HRT's specialized training for hostage recovery in confined structures made them the correct choice for a second-floor converted maintenance suite with restricted egress. The request was approved within 48 hours. DEA Special Response Team was designated secondary containment at Riverbend, with an additional DEA element supporting the Dallas simultaneous operation alongside HSI agents already embedded in the Dallas financial investigation. Tactical planning took 4 days, building layouts, utility shutoffs, comms, evacuation routes. On October 13, 2025, Halverson held the final pre-operation briefing with all 4 team leaders in a conference room at the FBI's Tulsa resident agency, a space that had been secured and swept for the occasion. One detail emerged in that briefing that had not been in any prior planning document. The Tulsa building plans, sourced from county records, showed the maintenance suite with a single staircase access point, the primary expected route of HRT's first stack. What the county plans did not show, because the renovation was performed without permits, was a secondary interior metal staircase that the operators had installed during the conversion. Surveillance thermal imaging had detected elevated heat signatures near the building's south wall, which the team had attributed to HVAC equipment. The final pre-operation briefing, drawing on updated imagery, reinterpreted those signatures. The secondary staircase ran along the south interior wall and connected the second floor to a ground-level exit point that opened toward the loading dock. 20 minutes before launch, the configuration was redesigned. 3 agents were repositioned to cover the loading dock exit. The staircase the operators thought was their escape route was now fully covered. October 14, 2025. 5:10 a.m. The breach word went out at 5:11. The HRT primary stack entered through the north access point, where a cutting team had pre-staged on the chain link perimeter. Secondary HRT element took the east access point simultaneously. DEA SRT sealed the west and south perimeters, with 3 agents positioned on the loading dock covering the concealed staircase exit. 2 interior locks on the north access door. Both opened in under 30 seconds using a hydraulic spreader. The stack moved in formation up the primary staircase to the second-floor landing. An alarm inside the facility, a commercial wireless motion sensor, activated at approximately 5:12 a.m. The agents had anticipated this. They had a 90-second window before anyone inside could take a meaningful defensive action. They needed 47 seconds. The first reinforced interior door to the maintenance suite was opened with a manual ram at 5:12 and 40 seconds. 2 operatives were found in the south section of the second floor. Both were detained without physical resistance within 30 seconds of the door breach. A third operative was located in the facility's ground floor office area, where he had apparently been moving toward the loading dock staircase when the DEA element on the dock made their approach visible. He stopped. He sat down on the floor. He did not move again. A fourth operative was located in a vehicle on the facility's south access road, apparently preparing to leave. He was detained before the vehicle cleared the gate. All 4 on-site operatives were in federal custody by 5:20 a.m. 9 minutes from first breach to all clear. The HRT medic team made entry into the 2 interior rooms of the maintenance suite at 5:22 a.m. Both rooms were locked from the outside. Slide bolt mechanisms on reinforced interior door frames, not commercially available hardware, custom fabricated. 8 women were inside, all alive, ages between 22 and 26, all American citizens. Reported missing between late July and early September 2025 across Phoenix, Dallas, and Wichita. Each had been inside the Riverbend facility for between 73 and 108 days. Emergency medical personnel were staged at the perimeter. All 8 were transported to St. Francis Hospital in Tulsa, where they received immediate care. The attending emergency physician documented conditions consistent with prolonged confinement and significant nutritional deficiency. 4 of the 8 were admitted for inpatient treatment. The remaining 4 were evaluated and stabilized. All 8 survived. While the Tulsa breach was executing, a parallel DEA and HSI element in Dallas was moving on 2 addresses simultaneously. The first, a residential address in the Plano suburb north of Dallas, yielded one of the 2 unidentified actors, a man in his late 30s, detained at 5:14 a.m. Central Time while the Tulsa operation was still running. The second Dallas address, a commercial suite in the Uptown corridor, the Aspen Hospitality Office, was sealed at 5:17 a.m. Agents entered and found the suite unoccupied, but with active computers, active phone lines, and filing cabinets containing what would later be cataloged as over 4,000 pages of operational documentation, applicant files, recruitment scripts, contract templates, travel itinerary records, and a ledger of wire transfers cross-referenced against individual victim files. 5 individuals were in federal custody by 9 a.m. on October 14th. A 6th, the person associated with the Houston account identified in the financial records, was located and detained in the Houston metropolitan area at approximately 2:15 p.m. the same afternoon, following a coordinated effort between HSI Houston and the FBI's Houston Field Division. 6 detained on the day of the operation. The financial investigation of Aspen Hospitality Talent Group and Halcyon Industrial Properties, now jointly conducted by FBI, HSI, and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, identified a wire transfer chain running from the 2 Hungarian corporate entities and 1 Romanian entity through a series of intermediary accounts in Cyprus and Malta before reaching the Dallas Aspen Hospitality account. The total amount moved through the network over its 14-month operational period, approximately $3.7 million, of which approximately 3.1 million passed through Aspen Hospitality, and approximately 600,000 remained in offshore intermediary accounts that had not yet been accessed at the time of the arrests. The $600,000 in the offshore accounts, not yet recovered. The beneficial ownership of the Hungarian and Romanian entities, identified through Europol coordination and Hungarian and Romanian national law enforcement cooperation, traced to 3 individuals. 2 were Romanian nationals, 1 Hungarian. At the time of the Tulsa operation, none of the 3 were in the United States. None had U.S. extradition arrangements finalized. Europol issued red notices. Hungarian and Romanian law enforcement opened domestic proceedings. As of the date of this account, those proceedings remain active and unresolved. The 6 individuals detained in the United States on October 14th were charged under federal statutes covering forced labor, conspiracy, wire fraud, and money laundering, among additional counts. Federal prosecutors in the Northern District of Oklahoma filed the primary indictment. Additional counts related to the Dallas activities were filed in the Northern District of Texas. 5 of the 6 detained made no statements to federal agents following arrest. The 6th, the Plano, Texas resident detained in the early morning operation, provided information during post-arrest interviews that prosecutors later described in court filings as material to understanding the organizational structure connecting the Dallas front to the European beneficial ownership tier. That cooperation was noted in subsequent legal proceedings. One detail stands out in the case file. The recruiting apparatus was more sophisticated than the Tulsa facility itself. The Dallas front office, the professional HR workflow, the real-seeming offer letters, the posting structure on legitimate job boards, these required sustained effort and operational competence. The Tulsa facility was essentially a converted maintenance suite. The planning asymmetry is striking. The recruiters put enormous energy into acquisition and almost none into concealment, which is why a parts distributor in Missouri was able to see through the cover in a single afternoon. The evidence actually suggests the network wasn't defeated by surveillance technology or investigative genius. It was defeated because someone in Missouri paid attention to a purchase order. The FBI had the tools. The NSIT algorithm had flagged the missing persons cluster. 11 days of that flag sat in a review queue. Had Sandra Kowalczyk not made that phone call, had she assumed someone else would figure it out, the timeline extends. By how much is not something the case file answers. The financial unwinding of Aspen Hospitality and Halcyon Industrial Properties continued well past the date of the arrests. The IRS Criminal Investigation Division's forensic accountants documented that the Reno-registered Halcyon entity was one of at least 7 similar shell companies in a portfolio structure held through the Cyprus intermediary, each associated with a different property address in a different U.S. city. 6 of those 7 properties were investigated for operational use. 4 were found to be genuinely dormant. 1, in the Kansas City, Missouri metropolitan area, showed utility records consistent with active occupancy during a prior period, 18 months earlier, but had since been vacated. The investigation into that property, and whether it had served a similar function at an earlier time, was ongoing at the time the primary indictments were filed. The scale of what the Tulsa operation represented inside a potentially larger network, that question is not answered by the October 14th arrests. The conveyor belt parts account at Kowalczyk's Joplin distributor was administratively closed after the October 14th seizure. All assets of record belonging to Aspen Hospitality Talent Group and Halcyon Industrial Properties were frozen pending forfeiture proceedings. The Riverbend Gypsum and Wallboard facility was sealed by federal court order and placed under the administrative control of the U.S. Marshals Service pending disposition. The women recovered from the facility were connected with victim advocates and federal support resources. Their identities have not been released. Their names are not in the public court filings. Will this network, or networks built on the same model, reconstitute in some form in 5 years? Comment yes or no, because the operational template, a legitimate-looking Dallas-based front, a dormant industrial property, a shell ownership structure, a European wire transfer chain, requires no specialized knowledge to replicate. The components are all commercially available. The sophistication was modest. The concealment was primarily the absence of reason to look. What the investigation ultimately documented was a system that worked because of inattention and jurisdictional fragmentation. 3 missing persons cases across 3 state systems, none of them talking to each other fast enough. And 1 phone call from a parts supplier in Missouri that made up the gap. Sandra Kowalczyk has not been named publicly in any court proceeding. She provided records, made a call, and was not required to testify in the initial indictment phase. She runs her business in Joplin, Missouri. She still ships conveyor components across the Midwest. There is a line in the federal indictment's supporting affidavit, buried in the financial section, that describes how long the network had been recruiting before the Tulsa facility became operational. The timeline in the affidavit indicates that Aspen Hospitality Talent Group was in operation for approximately 10 months before the first woman was transported to Riverbend. 10 months of recruitment infrastructure, of job postings, of applicant processing, of HR-style paperwork, before the facility received its first occupant. 10 months? And in those 10 months, not a single flag. Not from the platforms hosting the job listings. Not from the banks processing the payroll-style transfers. Not from the shared office provider in Dallas who rented suite space to the front company. The network was dismantled. The $600,000 in offshore intermediary accounts has not been recovered. The 3 beneficial owners in Europe remain outside U.S. jurisdiction. The Kansas City area property's prior use has not been confirmed. And the demand for whatever Aspen Hospitality was ultimately selling, that demand produced this network, funded it for 14 months, and exists independently of whether any individual operation is running. 9 minutes to execute the breach. 108 days before the breach was possible. 8 women walked out of the Riverbend facility on October 14, 2025. The building is sealed. The conveyor belts inside it will never run.